Have you ever felt belittled in front of others, perhaps during a meeting, a family dinner, or among a circle of friends? A sarcastic remark, a condescending glance, or being cut off just as you were sharing something meaningful. That moment makes us feel small, wounded, and ready to react. But wait, what if there's another way? A way that compels others to pause, to respect you, not because you speak louder, but because you have greater command over yourself. This isn't about retaliation. It's not about proving a point. It's about mastering yourself in the way the Stoic philosophers have practiced for thousands of years, not with theatrics or flattery, but with a quiet strength that compels others to fall silent and listen. 1. Silent, but not defeated. Silence is not retreat. It's advancing without a sound. There is a common misconception that silence equals weakness. In a society where speaking up is seen as a sign of power, staying silent in tense situations is often mistaken for surrender, submission, or even a lack of confidence. But in Stoic philosophy, silence is not merely the absence of words. It is the mark of deep inner control, a deliberate choice, and a refined weapon for navigating emotionally charged moments without sacrificing one's dignity. In conversation, especially when interrupted or verbally attacked, our first instinct is often to react, to refute, argue, or even lash out. Yet that is the very moment we become reactive, drawn into a stage someone else has set. Stoicism reminds us that when we respond emotionally, we surrender our mental state to another. That in itself is the loss of true power. In contrast, if we remain silent in that moment, but with intention, such silence conveys a strength no words can match, because that silence doesn't stem from fear, but from confidence in one's own worth. It shows we have no need to argue to defend ourselves, for our dignity does not rest in someone else's hands. The true power of silence lies in its ability to force others to confront their own conduct. When someone cuts you off and you simply look at them, calm, neither angry nor retreating, your silence reflects their rudeness without the need for accusation. In a world quick to react, choosing not to respond immediately becomes a rare form of composure. A clear example is in public settings, like a meeting where someone interrupts to assert their point. A hasty reply can spiral into needless argument, possibly undermining your credibility. But if you pause, stay silent, and look at them with composure, you keep the upper hand. That silence becomes a space strong enough for them to realize they've crossed a line. And when you resume speaking, your voice, though unchanged, carries an entirely different weight. Silence in such a moment is not just defense, it is strategy. You're not scrambling to reclaim your voice. You let the atmosphere speak for you. And this draws a stark contrast between the one who governs himself and the one ruled by impulse. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Strength comes not from ruling others, but from ruling yourself." In every conversation, the only thing you truly control is your response, and silence is the clearest evidence that you still hold command, even when others lose theirs. Another aspect of Stoic silence is the refusal to engage in worthless confrontation. Not every word deserves an answer. When someone provokes or stirs conflict with sarcasm, choosing not to respond, not because you lack words, but because the moment is unworthy of them, is a powerful declaration of your inner standards. That silence is not avoidance, but a decision not to lower your worth to the level of what's being displayed. This behavior is often misunderstood by those who have never practiced self-mastery. They assume your silence means you're not strong enough. But in truth, the one who remains silently grounded is the one drawing a boundary, that they refuse to be pulled into petty emotional games, that they will not let anyone else define their worth by provoking a reaction. Silence is also a tool that reveals the true nature of others. When you don't respond to provocation, the other person is left with only two choices: continue or realize they've crossed a line. If they persist, they expose their own lack of control and their underlying malice. If they stop, it's your silence that has compelled them to recalibrate. In both outcomes, you've maintained the moral high ground without uttering a word. In modern culture, where debates often devolve into personal attacks, choosing silence intelligently is a radical act. It doesn't require submission. It demands conviction and the courage to believe this. You don't need to win the argument to uphold your value. Stoicism doesn't teach us to avoid conflict, but to choose which battles are worth fighting, and sometimes the only battle worth engaging, the one within. When we hold our silence while the mind storms, that is the true victory. Practicing silence in real life requires training. No one shifts from instinctive reaction to total self-control overnight. But each time we choose silence over anger, composure over impulsive response, we strengthen our inner core. And over time, that silence becomes effortless, not a forced act, but part of who we are, a presence others cannot help but respect. Another virtue of silence is that it creates space for others to reflect. In many moments, people don't need rebuttal. They need time to feel that their behavior is misaligned. That silence becomes a mirror, not reacting, not judging, but forcing the other to confront themselves. Silence also serves as a tool for gathering insight. In negotiations, arguments, and even personal relationships, the one who holds silence observes more, hears more, and therefore understands more. This allows for responses that are sharper, wiser, and more impactful. In Stoic teaching, self-control is never the final goal. It is the means to live a life of quality, and silence is among its most refined instruments. Not loud, not showy, but deep, enduring, and full of strength. It doesn't destroy relationships. It preserves respect. It doesn't make you retreat. It allows you to stand firm in a way that cannot be ignored. And finally, silence, when timed with wisdom, is the clearest declaration. I don't need to raise my voice for you to know I'm here. I only need to be quiet enough for you to hear yourself. 2. Your gait reflects your dignity. Walk with purpose, not to be seen, but so you cannot be ignored. Before a single word is spoken, people communicate through the language of the body. Among all signals, our gait is one of the first and most powerful reflections of the inner self. We may not notice it, but every step reveals much: our confidence, mental state, and above all, the worth we believe we carry. Gait, in its fullest sense, is not merely the mechanics of movement. It is a silent message about how one perceives oneself and the world. A hurried walk with a bowed head and slouched shoulders signals insecurity or a lack of direction. By contrast, a slow but steady stride, with head held high and eyes forward, conveys calm, control, and reliability. Stoic philosophy does not separate body from mind. For the Stoic, every action, walking, standing, speaking, reflects the depth of one's inner world. If the mind is trained in calm, awareness, and self-possession, the body will naturally express it in bearing. Thus, gait is not an external trick to impress, but the natural result of a composed and anchored inner state. In social settings, first impressions are formed in seconds, and gait, impossible to conceal, becomes our first greeting. Often before any words are spoken, people may not yet hear your views, but they have judged you by the way you entered the room. When you walk with an upright posture, shoulders strong, chin not too high but holding the head level, and eyes steady, You are saying, I have a reason to be here. I do not apologize for my presence. The difference between a confident gait and an insecure one is not only in appearance, but in how others respond. A hesitant walk with awkward movements often invites lower regard, not because the person is less capable, but because human instinct links presence with competence. On the other hand, someone who enters a room with poise, not rushed but deliberate, is seen as someone who knows their aim, understands their value, and therefore deserves to be heard. Stoicism teaches that we cannot control how others think, but we can control how we show up. Mastering your gait is part of that preparation. A Stoic does not perform to impress, but takes full responsibility for the image they project. They understand that dignity begins in how we treat ourselves, including how we move through daily life. To walk with purpose does not mean to appear militaristic or rigid. It is not about stiffness, but about presence with direction. Each step is placed not in haste nor in fear, but with clarity of intent, showing that you are not being pushed by circumstance, but choosing to advance, no matter how loud or uncertain the world may be. In modern communication, where body language is often muted by technology and distraction, someone with composure still leaves a lasting impression. Whether giving a speech, attending an interview, or simply walking into a cafe, if you move with purpose, the energy in the room shifts. Voices soften, attitudes adjust, even paths are cleared, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied someone worthy of respect. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The way you do anything is the way you do everything." That holds true for the way you walk. A steady gait serves not only your image, but also fortifies your spirit. When you adjust your posture, keep your back straight and your CC clear, you're telling yourself, I am here. I have a reason to be present. I don't need approval to have worth. That sense of self-respect flows back into the mind, making your actions more consistent, more aligned with your inner values. Moreover, your gait affects your psychology on a biological level. Scientific studies have shown that those who maintain a confident posture, even before they truly feel confident, can increase testosterone, a hormone linked to assertiveness and initiative, and decrease cortisol, the stress hormone. This reveals a two-way link between body and mind. When you command your body, you can guide your emotions, and when your emotions are steady, you gain greater control over your physical expression, including how you walk. Posture and gait don't just shape first impressions, they shape how others relate to you over time. In the workplace, someone who always enters with nervous, aimless energy is often seen as unready to lead. In personal relationships, someone who walks quietly with a bowed head may be subconsciously viewed as submissive. Conversely, a composed yet firm demeanor gradually builds the image of someone trustworthy, someone not easily swayed. Stoicism does not promote performance or pretense. The Stoic does not walk to impress, but to embody a standard of living. Each step says, I respect myself. I live by the principles I've chosen. I am not swept up by the chaos of the world. In this way, the gait becomes the physical manifestation of a disciplined mind, unpretentious, yet undeniable. The harmony between mind and body is a central Stoic aim, not separation, but integration. An alert mind, an upright body, steady will, steady steps. When that harmony is achieved, a person needs no many words to be heard. They need not argue to prove themselves. By simply entering a room, their presence becomes the answer. In a noisy world, where people constantly strive to be seen by doing more, A quiet presence grounded in inner strength is rare and therefore precious. A dignified gait is not about speed or stiffness, but about a natural poise that arises from within. When your mind no longer bends to the eyes of others, every step you take carries weight, not just across the floor, but into the hearts of those who witness it. 3. Stop chasing those who don't value you. The moment you stop chasing is the moment you begin to honor yourself. One of the most common signs of self-neglect is seeking validation from those who do not value you. It's a recurring pattern in personal, professional, and social relationships. When someone continually craves attention, response, or mere acceptance from others who offer no reciprocal respect, Stoic philosophy approaches this not emotionally, but with reason and self-governance. According to the Stoic life, what lies beyond your control is not worthy of your emotional investment, and other people's reactions, whether respect, concern, or indifference, are all outside your domain. Therefore, striving to please, persuade, or cling to those who do not genuinely care is irrational behavior, contrary to the principles of awareness and self-mastery. This pursuit isn't limited to overt actions like frequent messages, appeasement, or initiating contact. It also manifests in subtler ways, waiting to be remembered, altering your behavior to gain favor, or even compromising your values just to be accepted. When this occurs, the individual has placed themselves in a position of dependence, and in doing so, has surrendered a part of their own dignity. The Stoic understands that self-respect is not built on others' reactions, but on the alignment between one's actions and inner values. When someone continues to invest time, energy, and emotion into relationships that lack mutual respect, they deplete their inner resources for something unworthy. Meanwhile, a Stoic-trained mind will choose to withdraw, not out of pride, but from clarity about what lies beyond influence. To stop pursuing those who don't value you does not mean hostility or withdrawal. It is a deliberate act of guarding your inner energy, protecting your personal boundaries, and reaffirming your true worth. When someone does not value you, they will not honor your time, will not listen with sincerity, and will not place you as a priority in the relationship. In such cases, continuing to seek their attention is not only futile, but risks long-term harm to your self-respect. In the workplace, this pursuit often takes the form of continually striving for recognition from a superior or colleague who doesn't appreciate your efforts. You work more, give more, even sacrifice your personal time, only to be met with silence or worse, disregard. In that situation, a Stoic practitioner does not try harder in hopes of changing their attitude. Instead, they turn inward, developing themselves, focusing on intrinsic value, and if necessary, choosing to leave that environment to preserve their dignity. The same applies to personal relationships, whether friendships or love. Pursuing someone who does not care or who fails to offer matching respect stands in conflict with Stoic thinking. If someone repeatedly breaks promises, withholds time, or communicates from a place of superiority, it signals a misalignment in how both parties value the relationship. To persist is not an act of deep affection. It is an attachment to expectation, something the Stoic mind is trained to resist. Stoicism does not deny emotion, but always asks, does this emotion serve your spiritual development? And obsession with being acknowledged by someone who disrespects you is an emotion to be released, not nurtured. In Stoic philosophy, withdrawal is not avoidance. It is a silent declaration that says, I am not here to beg for a place in your life. I walk only with those who value my presence. This is not rigidity or wounded pride, It is the expression of a mind that knows the difference between true worth and borrowed worth. Self-respect is not just a slogan. It is concrete action, like stepping back from one-sided relationships, refusing conversations that make you feel small, and ceasing to place expectations on those who've never shown sincere care. These acts, though quiet, reaffirm your inner position each time they're practiced. A deeper layer of not chasing those who don't value you is the trust in your own sufficiency. The Stoic does not live with a scarcity mindset, nor seek outside approval to fill an inner void. They understand that if love or recognition must be pursued to feel real, it points to unmet needs within that require a different kind of nourishment. And the reverse is true. When you stop chasing, you create space for real connection, where respect is mutual, care is natural, and presence carries meaning. In that space, you don't need to prove anything. You simply are. And that is enough. Not chasing is also a way of reclaiming control. When you stop waiting for someone's message, you reconnect with your own time. When you refuse to invest emotion in someone indifferent, you restore energy that should have been used for your growth. In every refusal to pursue, you are training your mind in independence, free from the sway of approval or rejection. Epictetus once said, "We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgment about them." In this context, the pain of not being valued doesn't come from the other person's behavior, but from the unrealistic expectation that they should treat you the way you wish. Letting go of that expectation frees you from resentment and allows you to act in line with your values. Ultimately, not chasing those who don't value you is the path of a liberated mind, unattached, unbound by the hunger for validation, and unhurt by neglect. It is not coldness or apathy, but the highest form of respect for yourself. 4. Turning mockery into a test of character. Don't answer insults with anger. Let your composure silence them. In life, becoming the target of mockery, sarcasm, or ridicule is almost unavoidable. Sometimes it happens at a casual gathering, other times in a professional setting, or even among strangers. Regardless of the setting, what all these situations share is a sense of being diminished, hurt, and the urge to respond immediately. However, for the Stoic practitioner, instinctive reaction is not the preferred path. This philosophy is rooted in emotional control and the ability to distinguish between what we can and cannot govern. And one truth is clear: we cannot control others' behavior or words, but we can absolutely control how we respond to them. When mockery is aimed at you, emotions rise swiftly: shame, anger, a sense of offense. But Stoicism does not see these emotions as enemies, but as tests to be guided by reason. The more a person is shaken by words, the more easily they are controlled by others. But one with true character remains composed, even when their dignity is publicly challenged. One strategy often cited in Stoic practice is to respond with a calm question. Instead of rebutting, lashing out, or withdrawing, you might gently ask, "Would you mind repeating that?" Or, "What does that mean to you?" The calmness in your tone is not meant to retaliate, but to reflect the tastelessness of the mocker. When they are forced to repeat their words, now under awkward silence, the spotlight shifts from you to them. What is unique about this approach is that you don't argue to defend yourself. You use calm presence to turn the question back. You offer no counterattack or defense. You simply ask them to clarify their own behavior and let them face it. In some situations, silence itself becomes a powerful tool. When someone jokes at your expense in front of others, the natural impulse is to feel insulted and rush to restore your image. But if you remain silent for a few seconds without reacting, without showing pain. You shift the attention from the joke to your centered response. If you maintain a steady gaze and refuse to lower yourself to petty exchanges, the mockery loses its force. That silence is not weakness. On the contrary, it reveals inner strength. No words, no forced smiles, just presence. And with that, you reverse the dynamic without ever stepping into their game. Another Stoic-aligned response is the use of intelligent wit, not to retaliate, but to shift the tone. A gentle remark, subtle yet non-confrontational, can catch the mocker off guard and disarm the situation. For instance, if someone brings up an old story to embarrass you, you might smile and say, "Thanks for remembering it so well. I don't even recall doing that." Such a reply doesn't deny the truth, nor evade it, but transforms discomfort into lightness while protecting your dignity. Stoicism does not encourage winning or losing in conversation. What it seeks is mastery over oneself. In every moment of mockery, you face two choices: either let someone else control your emotions with their words, or remain composed and to handle the situation in a way you'll be proud of later. Strength lies not in what you say, but in how well you govern yourself. Turning mockery into a test of character is also a measure of your commitment to your values. When you know who you are, you're not easily shaken by others' opinions or remarks. When you no longer need external validation to affirm your worth, no insult can truly wound you. The mocker often hopes for a reaction. That is, how they seize control. But if you refuse to play their game, the power returns to you. Epictetus once reminded us, "No one can harm you unless you allow it." This isn't a denial of emotion. It's an assertion of your right to choose your response. In moments where you're made the subject of ridicule, if you choose silence, a calm inquiry, or quiet wit, you are exercising that right with awareness. Composure in moments of mockery is not avoidance. It is the unmistakable presence of someone who has trained themselves not to react on impulse. And that sends a message stronger than any rebuttal. I am unaffected by your behavior. I respond not to defend myself, but to preserve my values. In a society that prizes quickness and instant reactions, the one who remains calm in the face of scorn becomes the one who stands out, not because they won the exchange, but because they held their ground in dignity. No shouting, no retort, just being there. Like a solid stone amid rushing waters. No one can fully escape ridicule in life, but the Stoic does not seek escape. They seek a worthy response. They view such moments as chances to cultivate inner strength, as real-world exercises in living their philosophy. Each moment of retained composure brings them closer to self-mastery, not as an outward goal, but as an inward virtue. Turning mockery into opportunity benefits more than the individual. It alters the tone of the entire room. When you don't respond with anger or shame, but with quiet strength, you shift how the crowd perceives the moment. They stop laughing out of awkwardness and start falling silent in recognition. In your response, you set a new standard, not by judging others, but by being the example yourself. 5. When nothing works, leave with pride. If they don't see your worth, walk away without looking back. In the journey of life and our interactions with the world, there will be moments when every effort, no matter how sincere or righteous, yields no result. There are situations where, despite showing kindness, patience, and relentless perseverance, all that returns is indifference, unfairness, or worse, repeated disrespect. In such moments, Stoic philosophy does not ask you to endure further. On the contrary, it encourages you to step away, not in shame, but with the quiet pride of someone who knows their worth. Stoicism does not teach us to remain in all circumstances, nor does it promote unconditional endurance. One of its core principles is the clear distinction between what is within our control and what is not. When you've acted according to your values, communicated clearly, extended goodwill and dignity, but the other person, the circumstance, or the environment does not respond with fairness, then choosing to walk away is not failure, it is awakening. Many people remain in places where they are no longer respected simply because they fear change. They fear being misunderstood, fear being seen as quitters, fear they haven't tried hard enough. But a Stoic does not seek external validation to legitimize their choices. They ask only one question: does this still reflect my values? And if the answer is no, then walking away is a step toward truth. Leaving does not mean turning your back in anger or destruction. It is a deliberate act, carried out with calm and self-command. The Stoic does not storm out or leave behind bitter words. They withdraw, like one who understands that their presence is conditional, and that condition is mutual respect. This is especially evident in the workplace. Some devote years to a company, contributing real value, only to be overlooked, denied opportunity, or subjected to unfair judgment. At first, they think just a little more effort will make the difference. They sacrifice time, suppress emotions, and accept being diminished, all in hope of being seen. But the longer they stay, the more it drains both their spirit and dignity. Eventually, the choice is no longer about trying harder. It is about protecting oneself. Walking away from a place that no longer values you is not abandoning your goal. It is reaffirming your intrinsic worth. The Stoic knows that sometimes stepping away is the only way to preserve what matters most: self-respect, inner peace, and faith in one's own path. Likewise, in personal relationships, whether friendship, love, or family, not all patience is rewarded. Some stay in unhealthy dynamics, hoping that time and tolerance will bring change. But Stoicism does not gamble on blind hope. It observes, discerns, and recognizes the limits of self-respect. When the other person refuses to change, to appreciate, or repeatedly crosses boundaries, the Stoic practitioner will walk away, not to escape, but to be free. Importantly, leaving is not only a way to thrust what's harmful. It is a way to make space for what's good. A room can never welcome light if its walls remain sealed shut. Likewise, you cannot build a dignified life if you remain in a place devoid of respect. Walking away is the act of opening the door, not to run, but to invite in a reality more worthy of who you are. There is a common misconception that true strength lies in enduring at all costs. But for the Stoic, strength is not measured by how long you endure, but by knowing when it's time. They do not walk away out of weakness. They walk away because they are strong enough not to cling. When you no longer hold on to what no longer belongs to you, you not only free yourself from suffering, you send a clear message: I am worthy enough to choose a different path. The act of leaving is also a silent education. Others may not recognize their missteps while you remain, but when you leave, calmly and decisively, they begin to reflect. Nothing prompts deeper contemplation than the absence of someone who once showed kindness. You don't need to deliver a lesson, because your absence becomes the lesson. The pride in walking away is not arrogance. It is the quiet knowing that you lived by your principles, that you did not compromise your dignity in your efforts. And now, withdrawal is not defeat. It is a transition to a higher state, where you are free to choose your environment, your people, your way of life anew. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you find yourself in an unhealthy situation, don't stay and don't argue. Leave it like you would a room filled with smoke." This is not about literal escape, but a reminder Awareness means knowing when to stop before the damage runs too deep. No one is obligated to stay where they are not respected. No rule demands you keep striving in a toxic environment. You have the right to leave. You have the right to step away. And above all, you have the right to carry with you the pride of not having abandoned yourself along the way. I once believed that to earn respect, I had to speak more, do more, prove myself as competent and trustworthy. But the more I lived, the more I realized those who are truly respected don't need to make noise. They enter a room with calm. They remain silent at the right moment, and they know when to walk away without drama, without judgment, simply by being in control of themselves. Stoic philosophy doesn't live only in books or clever quotes. It begins in the smallest things, like not rushing to react when insulted, adjusting your posture as you enter a room, or having the courage to leave a toxic relationship even when emotions linger. Those moments, if we fully inhabit them, are the clearest practice of Stoicism. I no longer try to make everyone understand me. Instead, I focus on understanding myself. Because when we live in alignment with our inner values, the reactions of others become reflections, not measurements. True respect, I've learned, begins with the way we treat ourselves. If any of this resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future content. This isn't just an action. It's how we build a community of mindful and resilient living together. And finally, live in a way that allows you to hold your head high, even when no one is watching. See you in the next video.